So for this first round of videos, I wanted to talk a little bit about the prophetic identity in nature. That is, what makes a prophet and what they do, what's their identity and what's their nature. I know when I was growing up, I just had this image of the prophets as someone who saw the future and who foretold the future to the people. That's part of it, but it's a little bit different than kind of the fortune tellers who look into their crystal ball and see exactly what's going to happen. The prophets certainly do tell the Israelites what's going to happen in the future, but that's not because they're looking into their magic crystal ball. It's because they've been told what's going to happen because of God. And there's a lot more that goes into the prophetic identity than just telling the future. They have a much larger role and a much larger identity than just that. So we'll start our look at the prophet's identity by looking at their vocation story. And if you've talked with priests or seminarians before, I'm sure you've heard this term. Ask any priest or seminarian about their vocation story, and they'll tell you about why they felt it was the right decision to enter seminary, often because God was calling them to it. And prophets have the same experience of being called by God to take up this prophetic role within the people of Israel. So the first part of that I want to talk about is this prophetic, what I mean by a prophetic experience. The prophets are men of the word. That is, that they receive the word of God and then they transmit it to the people. And what this means is that they have an experience of God that they then have to communicate to the people of Israel. So it's not just limited to the future events. It encompasses every aspect of God's relationship with the Israelites. And this isn't abstract or theoretical, but a very concrete experience of God, who is the living God. And we can kind of contrast this a little bit with maybe the Greek god Hermes, who is the messenger of the gods. But his role within the Greek mythology is to solely transmit the message from the gods to the men. Whereas, as we'll see with the prophets, there's a little bit of a dynamic, a back and forth of God interacting with his people through the prophets. And this transforms our existence. And we have this quote, I put up this quote here from Ezekiel, from chapter 22, verse 30. And I sought for anyone among them who would repair the wall and stand in the breach before me on behalf of the land, so that I would not destroy it, but I found no one. This is what God is looking for in his prophets. This tells a lot about the prophetic experience, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But this is God seeking his prophets, and God will choose his prophets and call them. And then, look at this, so that I would not destroy it, the land, the people. That's what the it refers to. But that's the prophet's mission, is to protect the people, to bring them within the wall. And this prophetic experience, this vocation story, it's always an act of God. God is always the one who initiates. The relationship is entirely God's initiative, and that's true for us as well. You know, God always takes an initiative. He's always coming after us. And we just have to respond to that. To turn towards God. And the content of the experience, the content is God. It's an experience of that which belongs to God, this concern, this reaching out for us. And we can distinguish between God in himself and the experiences of God that flow from that. And God in himself is a little bit more mysterious, and we see that more revealed in Jesus Christ. And then finally, the pathos of God, and this is kind of a theological concept that expresses the concern of God for man. It's a little bit vague and nebulous, but this is expresses the fullness of God's concern for man, that there's nothing all of God's actions are directed towards and ordered by his concern for man. So God is always looking out for us, even when it doesn't feel like it. God is always involved in what belongs to us. He's active in every part of our life. God is never neutral. He's always acting towards justice. And what happens in the prophetic vocation story is that God invites the prophet to share in this pathos, in this concern for man. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on.